Welcome guys to another episode of the Benko Gambit video. Well, today we're gonna take with you one of the sidelines. I would say not kind of sideline, but like the move that they can try to play, the move 4, which is after the b5, queen c2 move. Well, okay, I mean, yeah, this is again, since we are right now seeing with you the force move sidelines, of course they're quite not common. But this is a move I would say, like, if who can play this move? I would say it's like 50-50, like 50%. Someone that's kind of goes for sideline and more confident in the sideline than the main line, because the person who plays queen c2 kind of he can make the prep with the queen c2 variation, you know, when they're playing. So, but the person who is playing with the black, I mean, you have to be ready with all the things, but again, you don't have an idea which exact the variation the opponent might go. But the good news, I would say, like when I faced queen c2, I actually gained a lot of advantage in all of my games. Like, of course, it's not like a standard Benko Gambit structure you're gonna set up there. But anyways, it's gonna be interesting position where it would be really in a black favor if the black does know his stuff very well. So after queen c2, we're not gonna go b4, but actually we will accept the pawn by taking b takes c4. And then after that, white goes e4. Which means here their main idea, they want to take that pawn with their bishop. And they're kind of delaying to take that c4 pawn actually. So that's the main point of the white. Okay, and once this happens, after that we go the pawn e6. So definitely we'll try to break up the center, which it gives two continuations for the white. It's like taking the pawn on c4 or developing the knight to c3. First, we're gonna take a look with you what if they go knight to c3, because this variation looks for me interesting, and also I would say it's interesting for you, because why? The question is, can we take e takes d5? Where here there's a pretty crazy variation that we're gonna go, which is e takes d5, and after that we're gonna face e5. If they go for standard ed, it's just going to be the mainline variation where we're gonna play d6, bishop e7. So it is going to be just like a transposition to main line, which you can see that later in the video. But let's take a look what if they play e5, because e5 kind of looks a move that black is now starting to lose their development, and it looks like we have to go back. But guys, you know, the chess is beautiful, and sometimes we can go some interesting variations that will be in favor of our position. Bishop b7. Yes, of course, we are sacrificing here the knight for the price of 3 pawns, of course. It's not the 2 pawn, but guys, look, these are not just pawns. They're monsters right now, because in the center, we are just threading anytime d4, d3. That can kind of stop their complete development and might then block it out. Of course, we're not gonna rush to play d4 move. The time will come to play this move. So after queen f6, I would say knight f3 is a pretty natural move, and then bishop e7, and basically we are waiting the moment when they go bishop e2, so we can go d4 and d3 the move. Because otherwise, if they don't develop the bishop like this way, we are simply castling, and even our more pieces will get into the attack. So without like having this pawn advantage, we also gonna gain another new advantages. So that's why white should actually not delay their development. I mean, there is also not really a way that they can fianchetto their light square bishop. So the only move they can try would be, in my opinion, is a bishop e2 move, which kind of they will try to make their development faster. And in this case, we go d4 because we are totally fine pushing the pawn, since we have here the d3 move. Well, the position getting really crazy, and it's really getting spicy, and yeah, it's very unclear position, especially when you're playing the first time yourself. But that's where the knowledge comes, right? And we are going to this variation to see like what the end will happen. Okay, d3, queen c4, and d takes e2. Yeah, it looks like we kind of fixed the problem, and the problem was that like we were down the material and we got that back. But the problem is another thing, there's knight c7 check is coming. It's kind of like right now, yeah, we are we are playing with the extra pawn, but we might lose the advantage, which is after king d8 there's a knight a8 move. And I will say again, this is a very temporary moment, we are losing, and definitely the person who is playing in this current moment without knowledge definitely goes for bishop a8. But here we have even stronger move than taking the knight, queen g6. And why we are actually going queen g6? Since the knight is already trapped, we are not really in a rush, you know, to take the knight. I mean, we can take that in the next move or after 2 moves, because of the knight is still will be trapped at that moment. And once we play queen g6, the idea is very clear. We are going for another target, which is a queen g2, and that's a double attack. And after this, the white can go into 2 directions, which is rook g1. I would say should be somehow the natural move. And there's also bishop g5. Yes, of course, we are reaching to this sort of crazy position, and I'm not really sure you might get this in your real game, but if you are playing this game in a classical time control, I might be sure that you can go to this variation. But anyways, it's a game of chess. It's always good to know, you know, like what might happen, like if you go to this sort of direction. So queen g6, yeah, basically we are threatening the g2 pawn. Let's take a look what if they go rook g1. Rook g1 just gives us the chance of bishop f3. And after bishop f3, they cannot take the bishop because of the rook is hanging. So after bishop f3, the best move is queen b3, which is double attack. And definitely we will save the knight here, not the bishop, because otherwise we might get checkmated. So knight 6, queen f3, and after knight d4, the position is kind of quite, I would say, equal, because of there's a move queen f4, and there is a knight c2 check. Yeah, it's a little bit unclear position, but after king e2, there's knight d4 check, and king e1, d6. Well, the position get like a lot of deeper moves, because it's a move 20 and it's still unclear position. But I would say eventually after queen d2, king d7, black is absolutely fine here, because we are just getting back the material that currently we are down the knight on an 8, and our knight is brilliantly also placed. And yes, our king is also in the center, and the white's king also in the center as well. But his pieces, I mean, his king is more vulnerable than the blacks, because of there is no, first of all, good defenders they have, and secondly, there is no like a blockade of the king, the pawns, that might white can get into more trouble than the black. But anyways, yeah, I mean, this variation is pretty interesting that we will just covered, and they can go to this sort of crazy variations. And it was actually just a variation where we went rook g1, and yeah, this is the first variation what might happen. There is a second variation after queen g6, which is a bishop g5 move. And I would say in order to figure out this sort of top moves, your opponent should be really something like 2500, maybe 2400, or at least title player. Because when I was checking this Chess World website, the most of the rating of the customers they mentioned me is like around from 1000 to 1900 USDF, or a little bit above than that. But anyways, in that rating range or basket, we can say, figuring out this move is not that easy. But anyways, I'm telling you, let's just see what might happen if they go to this sort of interesting variation. So bishop g5 is temporary, stopping the queen g2 move, but I would say it's not really easy the move to find for. And bishop g5, and there's a knight e5 move, very strong move and idea, because they kind of now blocked our queen, and they're going for their another threat on f7. Where after that we go queen f6, knight f7 check, king e7, knight h8, and here really crazy move that we are gonna go, which is a bishop d2 move. It might remind you, I mean, if the person watching this game and if they upload this game as some sort of Mikhail Tal's game or somebody's game, yeah, people would be really believe, because what we are seeing right now is really like a Tal style, you know, because Mikhail Tal was one of the genius like tactical sacrificer person, because he sacrificed in a crazy way that even it will stun even for now all the title players in chess. So bishop d2 just gives a like normal one option, which is king d2, because after king e2 there is just bishop a6 move, and white's position is falling here. So bishop d2, king d2, queen b2 check, which is after all these sort of crazy sacrifices, what we are having at the end is like a 3 times repetition. It's good for white and the black as well, because if white goes in the wrong direction, they might lose. But the problem is that if black also goes a little bit wrong direction, they might lose as well. But yeah, we eventually reached to this position where you might wonder, wow, like this was crazy variation, but it's only ending as a draw. Because this crazy variation, guys, being analyzed and just kind of I was curious as well, like what might happen. It's analyzed by engine, and if the both sides always makes perfect moves, then yeah, the result is equal. I hope knight c3 was the variation was clear how you should play. It's basically go for knight sacrifice. And one thing I would say, when you go for this variation, definitely you will play with more knowledge than your opponent, because at least you know stuff very well. And I'm not really sure the opponent will play all the top moves, and they might here already kind of make some sort of terrible blunder. For example, just some sort of I don't know, like any move that might get their position immediately to, yeah, fall. Okay, so after e6, we just covered knight c3. Let's take a look what if bishop c4. I mean, this variation is more calmer than knight c3, because after ed, there is no really e5 move since their bishop is under attack. So that's why they take e takes d5, d6, knight c3, bishop e7. So like a standard development. And after standard development, bishop e7, there's two directions that white can try to do. It's the knight f3 and knight e2. And actually, in the last couple of years, my opponents started playing a lot knight e2 comparing to knight f3, because the main idea of knight e2, they eventually want to come to f5 and kind of occupy some space in the king side of the black. So that's why let's take a look first knight f3, how we should play against this. But I would say whether they go knight e2 or knight f3, it doesn't really change the plan of the black. It's always the same, which is we go castle, castle, knight bd7, and eventually we will bring the knight from the b6 perspective. And h3, very key move, I will say it. So bishop g4, rook e8, bishop ef4, knight c4, bc4, bishop d7, rook fe1, and rook b8, which I would evaluate this position as an equal kind of playable position. And of course, black has a two pair of bishops, which after some of them might get into more freedom. But this current position, yeah, I mean, really playable. And the result of the rest of the game is simply depends from the level of the chess players. Okay, how about after bishop e7, they will go knight e2? Well, as I told you, it's the same idea. We go castle, castle, knight bd7, and knight g3, knight b6, b3. The good stuff about this idea about knight d7, knight b6, it will make stack their bishop on c2, because moving back is not a really case since they will hang the pawn. And also pushing back the bishop doesn't make sense since there's like kind of c4 moves. Also gets like a winning position for black. And yeah, that's basically in the queen c2 variation. This I would say like a standard position, like most of the professional players, like top 2700s, will end up having. And definitely the only move is b3, knight c4, knight c4, and there we go. How we should follow up from here. Because in these positions there are pretty many continuations that black can go for, which is a standard one. It's like rook e8 and then bishop f8. There are some variations where you can flank it with the bishop. There are some ideas we just covered with bishop d7, rook b8, and then queen a5. That's also another possible plan that black can go for. But here we go even more interesting one, and that is the move knight g4. And why we are actually playing here knight g4 move. The main goal of this move is to activate the bishop and somehow centralize the knight by attacking the kind of, it's not like really vulnerable, but kind of weak pawn on the c4 that white should try to defend. So after knight g4, there are two continuations. And actually, there are three continuations that they can try to do, which is bishop f4, bishop b2, or rook b1. Let's take a look quickly what about the move rook b1. Rook b1, I don't think really something it does, but yeah, they go for open file, which after that we go knight e5 and knight d1 to try. They're trying to defend the pawn at the same time, maneuvering the knight in a cool way. Bishop h4, rook b3, bishop d7, rook a3, and rook e8. No, but I would say this position is more simpler to play with the black rather than white, because the piece activity is really active. Okay, how about if they go bishop f4? Well, if they go bishop f4, we go bishop f6. And the main point of this move is definitely activating the bishop, but at the same time supporting the knight, because when they take, we want to take back with the bishop. It's not with the pawn. Otherwise, if we take with the pawn, we are ending up having the c5 and a7 isolate pawns, which is not good for the black. So bishop f6, h3, knight. Okay, so actually I kind of now remember the idea. The idea was to trade the bishops, not the knights, because after we trade, yeah, we trade the bishops. The knight is still good, and f4. I don't think the move right now they can go for, since the pawn is hanging on c4. So queen e2, bishop a6, knight b5, bishop b5, c b5, rook e8. And yeah, we got this position by not, I would say not analysis move, but like a human moves. Because if I'm playing with the black, I would expect from white this sort of logical moves and against logical moves. And I'm also putting the ideas how you can play against with the black. So here, I mean, they can try to play f4, which is not really scary. You can go anytime, then retreat the back knight, because if they go somehow f5, like in the future, I mean, your knight will be stay like a brilliant. So here the targets would be for you the d5 pawn. Eventually you can even bring the queen somehow to d4, and you can even open up the position, or you can double up the rook. I mean, there are many plans that you can try for and go for, and I would say which plan to choose for, it definitely matters how the opponent gonna play. Depending how your opponent like a planning, you have to create also another plan that should be somehow a little bit stronger than them. Okay, and your plan you're gonna create should be create some sort of like serious threats, which the opponent should not kind of ignore, you know, or you should not waste kind of the time for like a plan. The plan should be really strong, which the opponent should not be able to stop with the 1 or 2 move stuff. They should kind of take that seriously. That usually goes for a serious and a good plan. If your plan is serious and strong, the opponent definitely will pay attention to that. They will not ignore. Okay, how about bishop b2? Well, bishop b2 move is, for some people might look this a little bit the passive one, because like behind the, it's like a knight, but it's always for temporary. They can play the knight anytime, like knight e2, and then they open up the bishop, which is the bishop of the white that will stand really cool on the b2 spot. Well, how we should play here, like after bishop e2? We can still go for bishop f6 like a normal position, but we have a 2 pair of bishops, and our pieces are a kind of more active on the kingside part, right? Why not to start direct the attack by playing f5? So f5, simply we are going for what? f4, and after that completely securing the knight on e5, because that knight gonna stand like a brilliant, and it cannot be kicked out. So after f5, knight h5, I mean, it's according to engine the best move, but during the game, the opponent can also go for knight h5 if they see some sort of tactics connect with the knight g7. But I would say rather than knight h5, there are a lot of interesting options they can also go for, but which is not good for white actually. So knight h5, simply we go knight e5. So I think you got the idea. It's completely like blocking this bishop diagonal. Knight e2, and we go for f4. Yes, pretty interesting variation where we are sacrificing our pawn, and there is an idea you're gonna see a little bit later why we are sacrificing. Knight f4, bishop f5, queen c3, bishop f6, and then there is a knight e6 move, bishop e6, d6, and queen e8. And after queen e8, there's a rook ac1, and then we are taking the queen on e6. So knight f4 is not really possible because there's a simple tactic connected with the knight g6, and this is basically discard attack where we can take the knight and then bishop, so we are just having an extra material in this case. Okay, queen e8, rook ac1, queen e6, knight f4, queen d7, queen g3, and then rook a8, knight d5, knight f3 check, gf, and then bishop e2. Well, yeah, one more time I want to mention that this current analysis is definitely like 25 moves analyzed with the engine, and there is no really 100% guarantee you might get in your game. But anyways, my recommendation and advice, as usual, that your goal is to remember your structure, and once you put the structure, you have to remember like the plans after that. So if you want to basically conclude this video, I would say your main idea when they go for queen c2, it is breaking the center by going for e6, and then after that developing the knight from d7 and b6 perspective, and eventually taking the knight, trading the knight for the bishop, and after that completely focusing on the king side of the black, because that's we did the whole video of this video and in this variation actually. So yeah, that's what we can conclude for this video as a plan that how you should play against force move queen c2 variation.